and welcome everyone. My name is Taya and I'm here representing A Growing Culture, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting grassroots food sovereignty movements around the world. And I'm honored to be in conversation today with Jo Jandai and Chris Newman to talk about democratizing food sovereignty. Over the past year, the injustices that are woven into our food system have become much more apparent. We're seeing, intense consolidation of corporate control in agriculture, rapid industrialization and environmental decline, and huge disparities in, access to land and resources. And what's become clear this year more than ever is that power is at the center of so many of these food system issues. And as a result, the path forward to building a better food system really must put power at the center of the solution-making process. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce Jo and Chris, who are two people who are doing just that. Although they're farming in very different contexts, they've both created agricultural models that are directly addressing these questions of power and decentralizing control in the food system. So Jo is the founder of the Pun Pun Center for Self-Reliance in Northern Thailand, as well as Tamtarakit, which is a social enterprise that creates an entirely separate market for farmers and consumers in Thailand, all the way from helping farmers transition to a more self-sustaining method of growing food, to having their own facilities for milling and processing crops, to creating their own farmers markets to allow farmers to access fair prices and give consumers access to organic food. And Chris created Sylvanaqua Farms, which is a vertically integrated employee-owned cooperative of farms, nurseries, mills, processors, retail outlets, and wholesale distributors in the northern neck of Virginia. And they're creating a diversified food system that operates in parallel to the conventional system in the region, providing a broad market alternative that restores at least as much land as conventional agriculture degrades, and ultimately creates that political pressure that's necessary to redefine regenerative agriculture as conventional. So I want to thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And I want to dive in and begin by asking you both a little bit more about each of your models in your own words. So, Jo, I'd love to start with you and ask if you can tell us a bit more about Tamtarakit and how it got started.
Hello. It seems like your voice is not very clear to me. So.
All right, why don't we start with Chris on this one, and we'll work out Jo's audio.
Yeah, I was about to, could I ask you to repeat the question? It sounds like there was kind of a sound problem on somebody's end there.
Yeah, no worries. I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how you started Sylvanaqua and what your work looks like now.
Oh yeah, sure. I started Sylvanaqua in the worst way possible. So I quit my tech job because of a health scare that I had. There was too much stress in the job, and my wife and I had always thought we wanted to, at some point, leave the city and start some kind of farming project as like a retirement project. But because of the stress in my job and the health insurance that came up with that, we decided to accelerate that plan by 35 years or so. So at the time, this was maybe about 10 years ago, the entire discussion around sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, the farm-to-table movement and all that was even more all white and white dominated than it is today. It was nothing but like the Joel Saltons of the world, the Alan Savory's of the world, the Greg Judys and all these other people, Bill Mollison, like permaculture people and stuff like that. So I got my ideas for what economically viable farm to table and sustainable agriculture was from them. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the worst possible place to get that expertise from. But they were the only people to get it from at that point. The voices that we have now that are more elevated, like Jones, like Karen Washington, people like that, that you couldn't find them unless you already knew they were there. The people that popped up by default were very much a different kind of person. So we jumped in. And it took maybe about 3 years or so to realize that doing sustainable agriculture in the way that was promoted in the mainstream of that movement was impossible unless one of two things was true. Number one, you were wealthy and inherited land and had a bunch of money and had a bunch of wealth and didn't really have to worry too much about generating an income. Or if you were worried about generating income, you were willing to exploit people mercilessly, to the point almost of human trafficking, and sometimes getting into human trafficking. So the next few years we spent trying to figure out, okay, now what? Because, we'd quit our jobs, we'd left the city, we'd sold our condo, like we ejected from society basically, and kind of went on a journey to figure out, how does American agriculture actually work? How do the economics of it work, both on the conventional side and the supposedly sustainable side? And long story short, it led us to realize that agriculture in the United States has been deliberately depopulated. It's been deprofessionalized, mostly in the name of retaining wealth for a shrinking segment of the population. And the only way to really do agriculture sustainably is to dive back into my own indigenous roots and view the landscape and view the foodscape as a commons that's the responsibility of everyone to steward and to take care of and participate in. So that's like a nice theoretical basis, but then from there it's like, okay, how do you square that with actually needing to make a living and provide jobs for people and reprofessionalize agriculture and have things work on the ground? And that's where people like Joan and people from even like Zingerman's and reaching back into the past for like Fannie Lou Hamer's Freedom Farm Collective, putting together all these ideas for people who have put together these collectives or collectives of collectives that are integrated and participate in the entire food system and not just the farming part. That, learning from these people that are doing that work and from these people that tend to be marginalized and not listened to and, aren't going to come up like in your Google searches about farm to table and regenerative agriculture and sustainable agriculture. We got the notion that it was time to build not just a sustainable farm or not just a couple of sustainable farms, but to build an entire integrated food economy around my homeland in the Chesapeake. And to do that on a foundation of worker ownership, of human equity in the system, and controlling the entire food system from the farm all the way to the fork, controlling not just the land itself or the methods done on the land, but also the mills, the processors, the slaughterhouses, the distributors, the aggregators, the grocery stores, the food trucks, the restaurants, all of it. And basically making the decision that, things need to be done differently and for people to be treated, more well and not to pursue just profitability for its own sake, and realize that needs to be done, and then just go ahead and do it.
Thank you so much. And John, I also want to ask you to tell us a little bit more about Tamtarakit and how that got started.
Actually, Tamtarakit is started about 7 years ago. But before Tamtarakit, we start Pan Seed Saving Center and Self-Reliant Learning Center, because we think about we are a farmer, but why we don't have enough food to eat? We are the person who grow food, who produce food, but we don't have food to eat. That's something wrong in the system. That's why we think about we need to start learning center. How can we become self-reliant? Because we should not be hungry on this fertile world. Nobody shouldn't be hungry. But the way of thinking make us have some problem. The way we're thinking is not the right way. How can human hungry? So we want to show people that anybody can grow food easily, can have a house easily, can take care of yourself easily. So we started that about 17 years ago. We call Pan Pan. But after that, we discovered that there's a lot of problem in farming system, because farmers, they work so hard, but they don't get enough to eat. They grow cash crop, they work hard, but they lost money almost every year. Each year, any year that they have very high yield, the price will drop very low. If some year they have some drought, they have some problem, the yield drop, the price rise up very high, but they have nothing to sell. So farmer lost all the time. We think the system is not fair because nobody get benefit from it. Farmer work hard, but they don't get enough money to take care of their family. And then consumer, they work hard in the city, but they buy very expensive food to eat. So who get benefit from it? This is what we come together and talk about it. And we decide to set up a company we call Tamtarakit. Tamtarakit is a like fair business. It's to make everybody have benefit of the system, make it fair for everybody. Farmer have to survive. It have to be easy for farmer to make a living. And in the same time, consumer, they work hard. They need to get a good food. They need to have easy access to good food. And in the price that they can buy it. Food is the basic of life. It has to be cheap and easy for everybody. But the system we have now, we did not develop the system for human. We make food very bad quality and so expensive. Why we develop our world in this way for? So we think about, we shouldn't have the system like this anymore. We need to create a new system that serve us more, that help us more. So Tamtarakit is, we start with 3 people. We came to talk together, and then we decide to set up a company. The idea of the company is we want as many people as we can to come and buy share with the company. And then everybody who buys share need to get trained from us first to understand the same idea that this company, we did not want to make the highest profit. We need profit, but that profit have to be fair for everybody. Because if it's not fair, it will not last very, very long. So we want to make it last long and make it good, make it fun for everybody. So we did not compete with anybody. We just work for ourselves, for our group. So people came to the training, and after the training, they like it, they bought the share with us. And then from the training, in the training, we train about how to be self-reliant. So we need to have our own food, our own shelter, our own daily needs, and how to do self-healing. That's the main thing we train. Because this basic thing is the root of human's life. But the normal system, they cut our root off. So we have no root. So people study so much in university, and then they have no root. They have more fear. Even they know a lot. They know the moon, the sun, the star. They know everything. But they're full of fear because they don't know how to get food. They don't know how to make their own house. So I think we went too far. We want to come back to the easy and simple way. So we train people to come to make our own basic need first. If you have leftover, you can share. You can donate for the monks or the temple or the mosque or the church or whatever. And leftover, more than that, we can preserve it for security, for emergency time, for the crisis time. And more leftover than that, we can sell. Sell is very last part of the system that we train people. We have to think about ourselves first. We need to have a good health, good food, good life first. If we have more, we can share. If we can have more than that, we can save. If more than that, we can sell. More than that, we can networking and sell. That's the last step to networking. So this is the system that we do in the training. After people understand this, they will come and buy share. And then we need to make sure that everybody invest money with us. They need to understand correctly. We did not invest money for the highest profit. We invest money to create the fair system for everybody. That's the main idea. And now we start to have a market. We have some products in the model trade. Some we have our own market. Now we start to open more restaurants now to expand, to support people more who want to join with us. So Tamtarakit is a kind of business. It's different from normal business because we are like the co-op, but it's not co-op. People bought share from us. Even you have a lot of share, but you can vote. You can have only one vote. So it's similar to the co-op, but it's a company. So it's something we're learning, still learning now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Would you mind just muting your microphone now?
No, I did not mute. Okay, sorry.
Thank you so much. And I just want to move on to Chris now and ask a little bit more about sort of the context that each of your models are operating in. So, Chris, what were you seeing in the U.S. context, especially around land and sort of the economics of farming, that made you realize that a sort of a more alternative system was necessary?
Mm-hmm. So the kind of the strategy that you get out of the U.S. farm to table movement is that big ag, quote unquote, is corporatized. Especially the processing and marketing ends tend to be they're extremely well funded. A lot of them, most of them, are publicly traded. They have a huge amount of money, of capital and marketing expertise and influence, and they're tied up in politics. And it's really a hot mess. On the farm side, most people who are farmers now inherited their land because that's really the only way to get into conventional farming, because the land is so expensive, the equipment is so expensive. There's so much just racism and structural problems and sexism and generalized misogyny and things like that make it really hard to enter from the outside, especially if you're marginalized. So it's basically, you can't get into it. You just can't get into it all. And the problem is that if you're going to participate in sustainable agriculture, the strategy is supposed to be that there's supposed to be lots and lots and lots and lots of small farmers who are supposed to compete in the aggregate with conventional extractive agriculture. So, there's fewer and fewer of these farmers operating on huge acreage. And they sell into markets that are put together by ADM, JBS, Cargill, all the big kind of integrators, aggregators, etc. We're supposed to compete with them by there being 100,000 of us for every one of them, and we're going to sell direct to market, and we're going to cut out the middleman, and we're going to support farmer incomes, and we're going to make this thing work. We're going to make this thing economically viable. The problem is that the environment for everything around that makes that impossible. The only reason I was able to get into farming, for example, is that I came from tech and had basically a ton of money to spend and lose in realizing that this was the wrong way to do it. And everybody you see now in the farm to table movement, and I'll say, in the US, a lot of speakers in this group, in this 7-day event that's going on, you look into their histories, most of them inherited their land, came in with a whole lot of money, and were just privileged enough to come in. And if the requirement to succeed is that you're already rich, your strategy is going to fall apart. You can't have a democratic movement only for rich people. That has another name, and it's not democracy. So there's kind of like this regenerative farm to table, oligarchy / plutocracy, or whatever the heck you want to call it. And it's not going to work. So our work shifted you know, when we realized like how farm economics works, and why, for example, conventional farmers don't really need to make profits, and even though they whine about losing money, you know, half of the year, somehow they manage to stay alive and feed themselves. And you know, you look at the USDA ERS, and the average farmer has something like a $850,000 net worth. We needed to figure out a model that would compete with this somehow, and we shifted from let's make a really good sustainable farm that really takes care of the landscape, and we really zoomed out and said, how do we create an environment where our kind of agriculture can thrive? It was really an environmental issue, and it really got to the point where farming was actually the last thing you need to worry about. Because most people, like, you know, somebody wants to start a farm, they jump on the land. It's like, I need land right now. They find like 5 acres, 10 acres, maybe a quarter acre, or like a rooftop, or, you know, whatever you can get, because land is expensive and that's the way it is. They get the land and then they think about the marketing. And that's why most of them fail. You know, we fail. I don't know if there's any statistics around like sustainable ag or farm to table failure rates or whatever, but I bet they're around 90%. At least. It's insane. Just from my own experience, like the people that I came into the business with, it's like I'm the only one left. You know, I feel like I'm in a war movie, like charging a parapet or something, like people just getting blown up left and right. And I'm just like, why am I still alive? So we can't really have that. So what we've done is create a model that really focuses on making land, capital, but most importantly, markets available to farmers that want to come into a system. The problem with farming with us is not only that land is expensive and inaccessible and marketing is hard to do, but it's a system where in order to be a successful farmer, you also have to be a successful entrepreneur. And there's only so many people that are going to have the privilege, the energy, the skill set, et cetera, to make it work as a farmer, as an entrepreneur. You know, when I went into software, I didn't have to be an entrepreneur. You know, I went to college, I got my degree, and then I went to work for somebody that already had the contracts, that had an office, that had servers, that had computers. Like, all I had to do was be like a kick-ass software developer. That's it. Like, I didn't have to find contracts or, like, you know, kiss anybody's butt to like get our market to work and all that stuff. So, you know, why shouldn't it be the same way for farmers who have that, you know, really complex and professional, frankly, skill set? Why should they have to figure out, oh, I need workers' comp. Oh God, I need general liability. Oh crap, do I need to do cash accounting, or do I need to do accrual accounting? Like, what kind of lease should I be securing? You know, what the amount of like administrative nightmares that hit farmers left and right is what drives a lot of us out of the business. And if you make it through that, then you got to do the marketing part, and that part is hard, especially depending on what part of the country you're in. So we decided our farm was really lucky in that we got the marketing part right, because I don't know, I just maybe have a talent for it, and we also got smacked around left and right by the like regulatory stuff and the insurance stuff. And I just happened to have enough money in my piggy bank to survive, you know, getting smacked around by that. So I wanted to create a system where the next people that came in didn't have to go through that. And I wasn't just going to create a model that said, look what I did, and now you can too. I wanted to create something that said, we've created the market. We've got the regulatory and G&A infrastructure and the entrepreneurial stuff that gets your business able to run. Come with me. Use our market. Use our land. It's yours. You know, get an equity stake. You don't just have to be an employee. You don't just have to be an employee and, you know, like be an at-will employee and, you know, you can just get fired whenever. You know, you have an ownership of it. If we own land, you own part of the land. If we own the markets, you own part of the markets. You know, just make it all integrated and equitable, and let people do what they're good at, and remove all those friction points that are keeping us off the landscape. For us, it really was about centralizing our access to the parts of farming in America that cause us to fail as small farmers, and make bringing people onto the landscape as frictionless as possible. So there can be more of us, so we can control more acreage, so we can get more people fed, so we can leverage economies of scale, so we can get the price of food down, so we're not just feeding rich people. So yeah, I'll stop there because I don't want to take up all the time because I could. So I'm going to turn that over to Jo.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's really fascinating that you've both created these kind of parallel markets that exist sort of outside of the conventional one. And John, I'd love if you could tell us more about the market that you've created with Tamtarakit and how you sell products directly to consumers. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
For the market that we do now, we do, the first thing is the first product is rice, because we train farmer to grow rice, to grow food. Rice is the main thing. So when we got rice from them, we mill them, and we try to make organic rice very close to the chemical price. That's the aim. And then we sell online in the main market, and then we sell in the modern trade too. And then many people who have a connection with us, they know how to get it, because we have delivery system to their home too. And in the same time, we do the farmer market and in Bangkok, in the main city. So farmers who have more food than they can eat, they can send to the company can sell for them and then send the money back to them. This system, it worked very well so far, but not many years ago, we have problem with the new modern trade, like something like 7-Eleven or some big department store. They're spreading all over the country, and it makes people go to the convenience store more. So people don't want to come to the farmer market. Now what we're doing now, we do like a food truck or something like that. But we have application in Bangkok. Wherever you are in Bangkok, you can come to our application. You click into our application, and then it will connect you to the team, and then they have an appointment with you. What time the truck will arrive at your house? So you just wait there, and then the truck will go to your house, and after that go to another house. So this system worked pretty good so far. And then this year we plan to expand more food truck like this. What we have now is rice, eggs, fruit, vegetable, but we don't have meat and chicken yet, because most of people who join us, they don't want to have a lot of animal. They don't want to kill animal. So it's hard for this part, but we think about it in the future. When we grow more, we will have more products to support people more. So in general, our market now, we just use every direction that we can do it. And the main thing that we use now is online market. It helped a lot, especially in the COVID time. People don't want to go out, don't want to go shopping anywhere. So the online market grow very good during this time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And well, I know that both of you, pay close attention to sustainability on your respective farms. You're farming in a way that's environmentally sustainable, but that isn't sort of the main focus of what you're doing, of your models. And I want to know why you've both decided to create models that put democratization and power redistribution, really at the center. So, Chris, I'd love to start with you on this one. You started more kind of in regenerative agriculture circles, but obviously Sylvanaqua's focus is sort of extended far beyond that. So can you tell us more about that shift and what went into that?
Sure. I think the bottom line is you can't have environmentally sustainable agriculture without democracy in it. If you have if you have a farming system that's only available to a few people, and where it's profit centered, and it's based on what you can get out of it, and it's based on exploiting people, you can't really do environmentally sustainable agriculture right, because you're going to be tempted to cut corners. You're going to be tempted to have as few people involved as possible, and the fewer people you have involved on the landscape, the more your landscape tends to go to hell in a handbasket, because you're not paying attention to it. You don't have eyeballs on it. There's I don't know where the saying comes from, but it says something like the best fertilizer is the farmer's footprints. If you don't have that many farmers on a landscape, then you're not going to have very good fertility. Indigenous agriculture, it's weird to think of indigenous agriculture and mixing indigenous ethics with farming, because in my language, in Lenape and Unami, there is no word for farm. The idea that you would take a piece of land and like draw a square around it and say, we're going to grow food here, but we're not going to grow food here, is dumb as hell in our language, in our culture, to the point where there's no word for it. Even the word for farmer doesn't really mean farmer. It's a verb, actually. It's not even a noun. It's a word that describes somebody doing something in the ground, and it doesn't even necessarily mean planting. It means somebody stewarding a landscape, and it could, the root word of it, ehake, it means someone active on or in the ground. And it doesn't necessarily mean growing things. It means taking care of soil, which means the blood and bones of your ancestors. It's a deeply spiritual and actionable kind of term. And our notions of taking care of the landscape is deeply rooted in the idea that you need people there, and is completely antithetical to this idea that you find in white conservation and European notions around conservation, that in order to protect the landscape, you have to depopulate it. And it's really difficult to get past that, because in the United States, in order to create these conservation spaces, to create these so-called wildernesses, like they had to actually be created. The places that, the John Muirs and the George Catlins of the world came across and saw these like beautiful Edenic landscapes, and like, how does it look like this? And the trees are so widely spaced, you can march an army through it, and food grows just absolutely everywhere. It grows under the trees, it grows on the rivers. The fish runs are so deep and so thick, you could practically walk across the Potomac. Like that wasn't an accident. People created that. It was people working with natural inertia and not against it. So, indigenous people will say out in the Great Plains, they saw bison, roaming across the plains, and would notice that if they hung around for a while and they left, and then you came back to that place for a year, the grass was thicker, they could stick around longer, the bison got fatter. That's regenerative agriculture. People want to pretend that they invented mob grazing like 30 years ago, but no, like the Dakota, the Lakota, the Comanche, like people were doing that hundreds of years ago before anybody showed up, as soon as they got a hold of horses. They went with that rhythm and said, okay, the bison are there. The bison provide everything we need, from shelter to food to fuel to everything else. Let's use them. Let's hunt them, and let's make sure we don't hunt them to death. Whereas sodbusters came over and said, no, this grass is stupid. We can't really own bison because they will not be domesticated. They do everything in a dead run. So let's plow everything up and plant corn so that it's cheap and fungible and transportable and almost never goes bad, and, creates a cash economy. And then let's mechanize it so that we don't really need any people out here, and so that one person can make as much money as possible from as much land as they can mechanize. So restoring justice and democracy to agriculture means creating a system where people can go back to the land so that they can protect it. Because as we've removed ourselves from these landscapes, and as we've de-indigenized our ethics around why we're on that landscape and what we're doing there, our landscapes have gone to hell in a handbasket. So yeah, you can't really put the cart before the horse. You can't talk about environmental sustainability and protecting soil and protecting water and protecting air without first saying, let's get everybody back, and kind of like what Jo does, like, getting in their heads and indoctrinating them and training them when they come in first to say, this is why you're going back. not just to make a profit. You're not just going to maximize your financial returns, but you're going back to restore this place, to restore community, to restore the relationship that people have not only to land, but to every living and non-living thing on this planet. The people and the democracy and the justice aspect is the fact that people can't return to the land because there is no justice, because of wages, because of wealth, because of access, because of America. You have to do the justice part first.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a crucial point. And Jo, I want to go back to you about this point of education. And I want to know why you place education so centrally in your model. Everyone, regardless of whether they're a consumer who wants to purchase or a farmer, why does everyone have to undergo that same training?
Because we want to connect people to the food. We want to connect people to nature, connect people to each other more. Because we were disconnected for a long time. We don't know anything about our life. We don't know anything. We don't know whatever we eat every day. So training is just the one tool that make people come back to think about food. Is very simple thing. You can get it anywhere. The world full of food, but we are hungry in the middle of food. So I think that's the education problem. So we should not be hungry on this earth. That's the idea of training. We want people to know that everybody can grow food easily. You don't need to be a skillful person. You don't need to learn so much, because if you understand the nature, learn how to be with nature, it's so easy. You spend less than 1 hour per day. You can produce food to feed the whole family, and you can create some income for yourself in tropical area. That's from our experience. That's why we want people to know that we should not worry about food in our life. If we learn, if we know how to grow food, everybody will spend a little bit of time per day to grow food, and then leftover they can sell or they can share. And then when they have no worry about food, they will have less fear. They can do whatever they love easily. If they love to be artists, they can go singing, they can go yelling, they do whatever they want to do without worry about what I'm going to eat today. Because when they come back home, there's a lot of food behind their house. So this is what we want people to know, that we should not be hungry on this earth. We have so many techniques, so many wisdom to grow food. And then the main thing is the right thinking, the right belief. If we have the right belief, the right thinking, we will have no problem in our life. But so far, we were disconnected from everything that very important to our life. We were taught to learn something so far. We collecting too much information that we don't need in our life. So we went too far, and then we lost the way. So we floating in the ocean. We don't know what to cling on. So come back to learn about the 4 basic needs is the main thing, the most important knowledge that every life need to learn. If we learn about this, we will have less fear, less worry in our life, because you can find food anywhere. You can build your house anywhere. You can make whatever you need anywhere, and you can heal yourself when you get sick. You don't need to go to see doctor every single tiny problem, and don't need to worry about insurance. If you come together, you share each other, you help each other, it's more secure than insurance. So something like this, I think we need to create a new system for us, because the old system is not for us anymore. It's just to make us become a slave, make ourselves become a slave of the system. So we need to enslave ourselves now by come back to create our own new system. But we don't need to try to change the old system, because It's like an old house. It's almost collapsed. If we try to fix it, it's too much work and it's so hard. Or maybe cannot fix it. But build a new house is a lot easier. This is the idea that we want to use education as a tool to make people believe that and make people see that life is something in our hand. We can design it. It's not our life. We can decide it. It's not decided by somebody else already. We can always change it. This is the idea. That's why we think education is the most important thing, to make people see that what is the choice in our life. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, thank you. That idea of agency is also so crucial. And I could keep talking to you both for hours, but I want to switch to doing some questions from the audience. So I'm going to start with a question for Chris. And the question is, how can we start to change how we ascribe value to land? So moving away from monetary value and individual ownerships.
So I have an issue where I don't know is kind of the short answer, but I will tell you kind of what of how we're relating to land and what we're doing. So what on our side, we're trying to get away from, with the farmers that come into our system and join our collective, getting away from the idea that I want my own piece. Whether you own it or whether like even in a lease type relationship, like in traditional, like if you look at like the Hmong or kind of any like community garden kind of setup, it's usually a system where you come into this kind of commonly owned or accessible piece of land, and like you get your quarter acre, you get your half acre, and you do what you want on it. The way we manage land is a lot different. And part of it is because the amount of land we have access to is pretty significant. It's probably going to be north of 5,000 acres this year. We tend to look at the landscape in terms of what the ecosystem needs. So if we take over like a 1,900 acre farm or whatever that's got kind of degraded woodlands and it's got some native trees or something that really want to make a comeback, but they need some help, and they've got some old pastures that are maybe a little bit degraded, and there's streams on the property, we'll decide, okay, we need maybe cattle and poultry to run over those pastures to get nutrients and mineral cycling. We'll decide we need to start doing ICO forestry around those stands of like pawpaw or American persimmon to make sure that they're able to thrive and have the companion plants that they want. And we'll decide, okay, maybe we need to find somebody that can do oysters in this part of the river, so at least everything downstream can be relatively clean and there can be some kind of harvest from it. So we look at it in terms of what the landscape needs, and then we bring in people who can work on different parts of that land. So it's not you get your quarter acres, it's I need you to take care of the grassland so that it keeps sequestering carbon and building soil. I need you to do indigenous agroforestry so that we can get free crops straight out of the trees and get that stuff to the people, because it costs nothing to harvest it. It's like Joan says, like food is cheap and free and everywhere if you do it right. And it's not even that hard to produce it. So we really manage the land that way. And in terms of valuing the land, if we're talking about like ownership and money and things like that, our model is based on a fairly large land trust that is not so much concerned with owning land, even though the trust does try to get some pieces of ownership, just because it's nice to have that backstop, like in case you lose a lease here, you lose an MOU there, and you have somewhere to take your stuff, and you have places for people to live, stuff like that. But we are much more concerned about having access to a landscape. We don't have to own it. We just want the ability to take care of it. And the good news is that most large landowners here, whether they're private landowners or whether they're public landowners, like, Departments of Natural Resources, National Park Service, etc., a lot of them have so much land, they don't really know what to do with it. You go to the Park Service and they'll be like, dude, could somebody please do something about this? Because we can't manage this much for us, right? California is on fire because of that. The public just can't manage it. Private landowners can't and won't manage it. It's too expensive. They can't make it work. And for a lot of people, having these landscapes is a prestige and wealth item. So there's a nice kind of synergy there where we've got lots of people who want to get access to the land, to protect it, and to build community around it. Like it makes it possible. So yeah, I don't want to take up all the time. So I think that's probably a decent enough answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I also want to ask a question to John. One of the questions is, how can we discuss and implement food sovereignty and justice in highly urban areas? There's billions of people who now live in megacities, and that number is rising. So I want to know how you engage with, people who are living in cities like in Bangkok, and how you bring them into your model.
So for people who live in the city or people who even live in the country but they don't like farming, the way to do is organize themselves. They can set up a co-op or a company or a group of people and connect with organic farmer. When we connect together, they can send their produce to your hand, your company easily, very cheap price with no middleman. This is the way we try to do here. But if people in the city who love to do farming, the first thing is they can do rooftop gardening or vertical gardening or small area or even microgreen or something like that. They can enjoy with it if they like it. But people have to do what they like. If they don't like, don't try it. It's a kind of suffering. So if don't like to do farming, don't try to do farming. So it's not fun. So it's the best way is try to reconnect with farmer who love to do it. This system, it will help each other a lot. Farmer who do organic farming, who grow with their own indigenous seeds, they want to do it. They love it. They taste good. They want to share with other people. But if nobody buy from them, if nobody eat from them, they have no energy to do it anymore. So if city people help, it will help this farmer to grow in the way that they love it more. So to connect together is the main thing that we can do.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful part of the model, that you're able to bring people together through collective education, to bring everyone into the model. And Chris, I'm going to go back to you. Somebody's asking how people who are wealth holders, so philanthropic organizations, investors, or individuals who don't necessarily have farming expertise, how can they support the development of initiatives like you're doing, sort of successful cooperatives, and their surrounding communities?
Yeah, it's a pretty short and simple answer. Give us land and money. It really is that simple. I don't mean to be like a smart ass by saying that. There are people in the ground, on the ground, all over the place who are doing food sovereignty work, and what they are starved of is resources, basic resources, money and land. And what happens, my experience working with people who are wealthy or who are adjacent to wealth and want to help, or at least think they want to help, is they kind of want to offer us everything but what we actually need. They want to offer us like exposure. They want to introduce us to this person. They want to help us get technical expertise. It's like they want to do everything but give up the stolen resources that we need to enact justice on the landscape. And the hard thing to tell people, and that I've had to tell people, is that I don't need help. I don't need my hand held. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I want to do. I have budgets and very, very detailed plans that are publicly available for people to look at. Like, I don't need technical assistance or education or to meet this person or to meet that one. It's like, write me a check or leave me alone. Because if you don't, you're wasting my time. And that's something that a lot of people just aren't. who are doing this work on the ground aren't really in a position to tell a person with deep pockets that kind of truth. But that is the truth. We have plans. We know what we want to do. We don't necessarily want to we don't want to be on the conference circuit necessarily. We don't want to do TED Talks. We don't want to run our mouths and talk about it. We want to do the work. In order to do the work, we need the money, we need the land, we need the resources. So, if you have them, get them to us. And if there's something in between, that's keeping you from giving it to us, we need to form a nonprofit, or we need to do something to shield you from taxes or liability or whatever, then help us do that and then write us a check and then give us the land. But don't dance around it. Like I tell people, if the Rockefeller Foundation can write a check to Dan freaking Barber for $30 million to create a boutique jewel box restaurant in the wealthiest enclave on the planet, you can write a check to people like Joan and like me and like Carol Washington and people that are doing work on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Joe, one more question for you. So can you tell us more about who your customers are in terms of demographics, and how you sort of ensure that you're not just supplying to wealthy people, that many people can access, the food that you're selling?
Many our customer is from everywhere, because it's all kind of people can come to the farmer market, or the people who live in the city, mainly because we are not big enough to expand the market into rural country. But most of our farmers are in the rural country. So these people, they grow enough for themselves already. So what we sell is leftover from them for the city people. But it's leftover, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it's good because it's organic. Everything is grow with care. So our customer is from everywhere. Even some factory, some company, they have a lot of staff or worker there. And the owner, they love our idea. So they just produce from us to cook food to feed their worker in their company. So it's diverse a lot.
Amazing. And we're almost out of time, but I want to sort of ask you both one more question. It's been so illuminating to hear you both speak to each other on these issues, since you're, from such different places, but you're, both doing, in some ways, similar work. So I'll start with Chris on this one, but what do you think is the role of collaboration and relationships like, you and Joe have, and sort of knowledge exchange in this collective fight for food sovereignty?
Mm-hmm. So polycultures are almost always better than monocultures. You need people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, people who speak language differently, who interpret language differently. Diversity always breeds brilliance. And there's a thing that I do, on my farm that at least I try to do on my farm is when I have an idea about some specific thing like logistics or about a better way to grow tree crops or something like that, I'll put it out to everybody, even people who I don't necessarily on my team, even people who I don't necessarily think would know about logistics or know about silviculture or agroforestry or whatever, because you never know what experience or what angle somebody's going to bring to something that you haven't thought of. And so it's incredibly important to have these collaborations, especially with people who are as culturally divergent as say Joe and I are, because it's it's so important that guys like us talk, because frankly, most of the ideas that I've been able to adapt to kind of untie this knot around how do we do sustainable agriculture that works in this economy, I've taken an awful lot of ideas from my 40-minute conversation with Joe. So much of it came from it. It was an aha moment. And I know there's a lot of people in agriculture spaces, in mainstream agricultural spaces, that'll say the dude is farming outside of Thailand. Like the whole economy is different. You know, their farmers already have land. That, you know, they have the ability to integrate. The cost of living is lower. Blah blah blah. Like there's a lot of people that say, why would you bother? But the best ideas I have ever had have always come out of left field. And as long as we're collaborating, we create the space and the opportunity for that to continue to happen. And it's also why it's so important. You know, when you look at these regenerative, sustainable agricultural conferences that tend to be just full of white people, full of rich white people, full of rich white people with similar politics, the more similar everybody is, the more anemic your problem solving is going to be. Justice is not just about being fair to marginalized people. It's about taking people who are not marginalized and availing themselves of the skills and the expertise and the toughness and the resilience of people who are marginalized, who have spent their entire lives architecting their existence around incumbent opposition. That's what we're facing in food sustainability, is we want to do regenerative agriculture, but everything is against it. The only people, the people who have the best experience fighting that every day as long as they live, are people who are being pushed off to the sides. So we need each other, and collaboration is key to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Jo, I'll give you an opportunity to answer this as well. You know, what do you think is the role of this kind of collaboration and knowledge exchange in your context for the fight for food sovereignty?
I think we need help from every direction. So we try to try to communicate with every direction, because everybody, even rich or poor, they still eat food, eat bad chicken from the same factory. So it doesn't matter you have more money or less money, you still have the bad health. So it's good to come together and share and find a solution together. So we think we don't want to fight with anybody, but we want to fight with ourselves. How can we free ourselves from the system? So I think many people understand this. That's why we have so many people from every career, every way of life come to join us, to help us. Even rich people still come and help. They don't have experience about farming there, but they bought a piece of land and they come back to do farming, and then they set up a group of people to help together to farm. So come back to farming is one way of create a new life. Life starts from the land, from the soil, from the water, from the air, from the plants. So we need to come back to take care of our life. Take care of our life mean take care of the soil, the water, the plant, animal, and everything. So people can understand easily in this way. I think we are not very big group, but we grow quite stable so far. In the last 7 years, we have more than 10,000 people join us now. I feel like we're growing, even slow, but it's stable. So I think we have hope.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. We're unfortunately out of time, but I want to thank you both for taking the time to speak with all of us today. It's really, really inspiring to hear about your work and how you've been able to build this kind of, collective solidarity in this global fight for food sovereignty. So thank you both again. And you can find more information about Jo and Chris's work through the ORFC program. So thank you both, and have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.